It's 8:45pm on Thursday, the 9th of February 2017, and this is the Ask TCW podcast live. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Ask TCW podcast. My name is Jono Bullard. Delighted to be joined tonight by a returning Aaron Lord.
Hello, good evening.
Adam Reddish.
Good evening, everybody.
And Tina Taylor.
Hiya.
Hello everyone. Well, we want to say thank you very much once again for sending your questions in to us. If you want to get in touch with us during the show, you can do via Twitter. It's at CatsWhiskersTV and it's hashtag AskTCW. If you want to send any questions in or react to anything that we say or any of the questions that we discuss tonight. So we will get straight onto it, and this question comes from Jack Dent, and he says, with Jeff Dimon out for 6 weeks, what are the chances of getting a replacement? Adam, we'll start with you.
My honest answer is probably very little. I just think that with a Continental Cup one, the club are just seemingly drifting from my perspective. And, the problem is, if we carry on like this, we're going to turn up at the playoff, the quarter-final game. We're not going to be ready for it at all. And we're going to arrive very half-cut. So I can't see it really happening. I can't see us replacing Jeff Dimon. And that just means that other guys have got to step up, log more minutes, and that makes them more vulnerable to injury. So, we're playing with fire, not replacing players, when they're out for notable periods of time. But it just seems that with the club's primary objective met, where's the real sort of commitment to excellence to make sure that we arrive at the playoff finals with good form.
Okay, Tina.
Well, I mean, we've just seen our chums up the road bring in somebody, haven't we? So, and they're not even injury laden. They're just shoring up and creating competition. So we know it's possible, but unfortunately, we've already seen this season the lack of any replacements that have come in. So I would like to see us be proactive, but unfortunately, based on what we've seen this season, I think the very quick answer to that question is none.
Okay, and finally, Aaron.
Well, I'll offer a little bit of positivity then after what Adam and Tina said. I would just say that I think there's slight chance in the sense of if you think of how Corey kind of recruited Quick and McDonald, kind of deadline day signings last season. I think maybe with Dimon's injury, that might just force his hand a little bit more to maybe make that deadline signing, which I would say is a defenseman. And I also think maybe just the way that our defence is playing at the moment, that he might not have no choice or no option really. I think if we were kind of playing well and getting away with it, it might be easier to not replace him. But I just think that maybe there is that slight chance that we might see, that kind of transfer that I talked about just a minute ago.
I mean, I must admit I'm not hopeful, but there is 6 days until the deadline. Deadline's the 15th of February. I really like to think that there will be at least one extra body coming in, but I must admit I am probably more on Adam's wavelength that the priority for this season has been met. So why would they spend any more money? I hope, really hope I'm proved wrong. But we shall see. We shall see what happens in the next 6 days. Right, as you can imagine, after the incident at the weekend where Jeff Dimon got his fingers broken by Andrew Hotham's slash, and the DOPS review gave Hotham a 2-game ban. We've had a few questions around DOPS. The first one comes from Kenwyn Jones, who is a Cardiff Devils fan, and he says, is it time for the Elite League to publish DOPS guidance on suspensions? 2 games for injury through slashing, 3 games for fighting a fan. So I think what Kenwyn's asking for there is, will there be some sort of tariffs? Can you see that happening? Tina, we'll start with you this time.
Well, I don't see any reason why not. I mean, I think part of the problem is that over the course of the Elite League's existence, there's been a very inconsistent DOPS panel, DOPS process, DOPS anything. It's changed seemingly year on year up until maybe the last 2 or 3 seasons. And, when you've got that kind of inconsistency, I think it's difficult to sort of put down any guidelines because, if we're still going on, if the DOPS panel still runs as it did last season, then, we've got people from various leagues, who are, they're tied to various leagues around Europe, as I understand it. So it could be, a problem as well. Part of the problem as well that the different leagues potentially have slightly different guidelines going on. So I know the NHL do it, but that's the most apparently the most organised league in the world. So that you'd expect them to have that sort of thing, and I think it is possible to have those sorts of guidelines. So if as I say, the same is happening this season as was explained to us last season, you can sort of send these DOPS reviews out to your various members of the panel and say, this is our guideline, this is what we would normally give for this kind of incident. What do you think? Or, if you've got previous incidents that you had that are similar, you can send them example footage and they can, compare side by side, like for like. So I think it is definitely possible. And I think with a little bit more DOPS consistency, I think it's something that the Elite League should probably look into at the very least. I mean, perhaps they're already talking about it. Who knows? But yeah, it does seem sometimes that the bans that come out are. They do seem a little bit, drawn out of a lucky bag kind of effort. The mass speculation that goes on about what kind of bans people are going to get just shows that nobody really knows. There is currently no guideline. It would be nice to have something like that because it's all about consistency. That's what we're going for. We don't want anybody. Hung for I don't know for a 2-minute boarding, and we don't want anybody being let off for practically murdering somebody on the ice. It's not you need consistency. That's the word, and I think guidelines like that, DOPS guidelines, and what minimum tariffs are for what incidents would be very helpful in helping us to achieve that consistency.
Okay, Adam?
I think I'm more of a believer in reviewing every incident on its merit, because I think that's the only way where you can look at the incident in totality and understand its severity. I just think that if you go down a guidelines sort of route, yes, it might increase and enhance the transparency. So, you can compare like-minded sort of incidents. But, as flawed as the DOPS process is, and I think it's quite deeply flawed, I'm still a fan of a group of people who remain anonymous and nameless, actually looking at an incident on its own merit, because I think only that way will you actually, be able to have some trust in terms of the outcome. Now, I know that the outcomes are quite variable, and lots of fans have got a bit of a beef about the inconsistency of the lengths of bans that different offences kind of carry. But I'm a little bit old-fashioned in the sense that I just rather every incident was looked at, and reviewed on its own merits without having to think, we gave that incident 3 games. That's kind of similar. So do we go for 4 games or do we stick at 3 games? I think I'd probably be a little bit wary about going down the general guidelines sort of route to try and establish what suitable penalties and punishments were.
But to sort of counter that in a way, if you think back to the start of the season, or certainly earlier in the season, where Craig Peacock slashed Derek Waltzer across the head, it was reviewed and nothing was given. And I think this was something that infuriated the Cardiff fans a bit, is that the incident between Hotham and Jeff Dimon was reviewed and Hotham gets 2 games, whereas nothing was given for that. And okay, there wasn't an injury on the play. Waltzer wasn't injured, but I think that's where there's sort of the argument about consistency, which Tina was alluding to.
Yeah, and I see your point of view, but I just think that some incidents will be very, very difficult to try and level up and equalise. For example, the recent incident in Fife, with the altercation with the fan. I mean, there are many different various sorts of altercations with fans. I mean, I remember at Hull, for example, the players mingle very closely with fans. What happens if a player brushes by a fan? And the fan takes umbrage. Do you give the player 1 game, or for something a bit more full on, like what happened in Fife? Should it be 5, 6, 7, 8 games? So you'd be setting a ridiculously wide sort of band for what sort of punishment a player might receive. And I know that's a bit of an extreme case, but I do think with guidelines, sometimes you might be opening yourself up to saying, well, do we have the right range there between, say, 3 games and 6 games? Because people might argue that the severity of the incident, warrants 10 games or 12 games or whatever. I don't think you're ever going to take away, how disillusioned or upset people are with whatever DOPS will say about the severity or otherwise of an incident that leads to a ban.
Okay, Aaron, have you got anything to add?
Not too much. I'm kind of I get what both Tina and Adam are saying, and I'm kind of agree with both of them to a certain degree. I think just very quickly, all I would say is if you could maybe potentially have a minimum of that each kind of offence carries, and that is what it is. Whether it's kind of like a soft call or a harsh call, but that is a minimum. But I do kind of agree with Adam in the sense of I still think every incident should be looked at. So then, maybe if it's a serious incident, then you take that minimum 1 game, 2 game, whatever it is, but then you say, right, through the severity of the incident, we are going to add another 6 games to this, etc. Because I do think that there's got to be some sort. I think it would be, in an ideal world, you would have some sort of guidelines and some sort of knowledge that any slashing or any checking to the head incident, that's automatically it's 1 game or it's 2 games. Say checking to the head 2 games, but then it's upon review we are going to keep it at 2 games, or we're going to add another 2 games because we find it a very severe, checking to the head. I think it's maybe finding a mix between what Tina was saying and what Adam was saying.
Okay. A question that I've got really, and I'd really be interested in hearing what you guys have got to say is DOPS really about player safety, or are the clubs being tactical with reviews? Now, I can't see any way that the Panthers review on Hotham was tactical. However, there was an incident in the game between Blaze and Steelers on Sunday where Brian Stewart was checked into the boards by Luke Ferreira as they both went down. Stewart aims 2 blocker punches at Luke Ferreira's head. However, it wasn't called on the night, and Steelers didn't put a review in. And then it turns out that Coventry are playing Cardiff on Saturday in their next game, and obviously if Stewart gets a ban, they have to bring their backup in. Steelers are challenging Cardiff and Belfast for the title. So this is something that doesn't sit well with me, because if it should be a ban, it should be a ban regardless, not waiting for teams to put reviews in. I just want to get your guys' thoughts on that, because it just doesn't sit well with me at all.
No, I agree with what you're saying, Jono, and the same things have crossed my mind as well in terms of tactical reviews or non-reviews through DOPS. The only way around that is to make it a truly independent system, and have, say, a referee's observer sat in the stand that looks at a game, an extra pair of eyes. So if the officials on the ice miss something, and say the person in the stand, the retired referee or whoever it might be, sees something, then their voice and their opinion carries a lot of sway, and they can maybe refer something to a wider panel of people for further scrutiny and analysis. So I think really the only way around this issue about should we stick in a review or not is to just take the matter totally out of the team's hands.
Tina, Aaron, anything to add to that?
Well, I agree. I think there is an awful lot of tactical reviewing. I don't think that should be the standard. But again, it sort of comes back to DOPS being inconsistent and being a flawed process and being this is the best that we can do at the moment. It may be another answer. If we're short on manpower, because you've got anything up to 6 games happening all at once. Adam sort of talks about having somebody in the stand. At a more simple level, 4-man system. That's going to help. But also, perhaps maybe you have 1 or 2 people who, and obviously this is going to have to be something that they are employed to do. Is watch the games back. Obviously, then the only thing with that is that you don't always get the whole ice surface on the camera. So obviously you're still going to miss things. So until the money exists in the Elite League to do something like come back to it, the NHL do with go into the in inverted commas war room as they do. It's always going to be a flawed process, unfortunately. But yeah, I couldn't agree more that we need to take the review system out of the team's hands. That needs to be somebody who is completely uninvolved, and that it needs to be taken away so that it can't be tactical, so that it is just you did something wrong, you are going to get reviewed. End of.
Aaron, anything you think to add there? Because just to come back with what Tina says, if somebody is there watching back each game, is that taking something away from the referee, or is it undermining the referee a little bit?
Well, for me, Tina mentioned the $1 million word, money. Until there is investment,
literally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Until there is investment in this, in DOPS, in player safety, then it's not really going to get much better. And again, Tina mentioned it. The 4-man system, that should just be a given. I'm sorry, and it's a real bugbear of mine that we don't do the 4-man system. And that should be the first port of call for me, is introducing the 4-man system. But regarding undermining the referee, I think the referees in this league do it because they love ice hockey. It's not their main jobs, or because it doesn't pay for it to be. And I don't think it's about undermining them. It's about working with them, understanding that they're human. And I think if you're going to watch it back, and you have somebody watching it back, and every game is reviewed automatically, it's just that's what happens in this league, say. But you take the referee's report into it, that's number one evidence, and then you're looking at the game footage as well. But I'll go back to it, and until there is serious investment in the refereeing in general, then we're not really going to see much improvement. And the teams with the current state of DOPS will continue to use it to their benefit, which is the example that you talked about at the beginning.
Well,
Can I just just before you jump off that, and before I forget, I've mentioned it before on a previous podcast at some point, and I forget whether it was a Ask TCW or anything. I don't think it's about undermining the referee. I think it's to a certain extent. I think it's accepting the limitations of the human being, because hockey has moved on. If you look at hockey now as to when the Panthers reformed again in the 80s, and that sort of time period, it's got faster. It's things happen in the blink of an eye, and I've probably I may have said this word for word, but the game has moved on, the officiating has not, and so any support that we can give to our officials, we should be doing it. They are only human, and whilst their reaction times have probably improved through watching a faster game, and and some of them have gone through it, grown up with it, and and they've been able to adjust. There's only so much the human body can do, and there's only so much the brain can take in. So it's about support, not so much the undermining. It's if the support tools are there, we should be using them.
Okay. Well, it leads nicely actually into another question that we've had from Jack Dent, and he says, if a DOPS review is upheld when no call was given during the game, should the referee be held to account in some way? And Jack suggests additional training or a fine, demotion to linesman, or reffing at a lower level. Aaron?
Well, the last demotion or reffing at a lower league, you're not going to see that on a regular basis, because we don't have enough referees to be able to implement that. And I think you have to be very, very careful when dealing with that, because again, like just what Tina says, I think at the level that we are at, it's about offering support. But and it's also, I think these referees, they're human, like Tina says, they make mistakes, and I think it's about, and I would say that most of those referees will hold their hands up and tell Simon Kirkham, for example, when they've made a mistake. I don't think many refs come off the ice and go, Mr. Perfect tonight, called everything spot on and stuff like that, but they can only call what they think they've seen, etc., or what they do see, and with the help of the linesman. I think it's about coaching, it's about on-site training, it's about reviewing that footage and talking to them and going, okay, why did you not call this, or why did you only call 2 minutes? You explain to me how you ref that game, and then whoever is in charge, Simon Kirkham, goes, right, okay, well, what I'm trying to implement is that would have been a 5-minute penalty, 5+ game, etc., or a 2 minute, or no, I think you did that really well. Forget about all the jip that you're getting off social media. You have ref that how I want my referees to ref the Elite League. And I think that's how we've got to approach it at this current level, because we just don't have the infrastructure to go, you've had a really crap weekend here, I'm laying you off. Because at the moment, the refs and the linos give their availability. It's not, it's not the other way around. It's what refs are available to ref this weekend. Okay, I will place that referee on that game. So, that shows you everything in the sense of we can't really go demoting, otherwise we're going to be scratching our heads round and we're only going to have 2 linos, or we're going to have 1 ref and 1 lino if we go down the route of demoting. I think, yes, in years to come we should have some sort of, maybe, do you know what, you've had a bit of a clanger there, I'm going to take you out of the firing line. I don't know. You very rarely see that in football nowadays. You see it in the odd occasion, but that's when they've had a referee's had like a clanger for 2 months solid, and they're just not having a good time of it. So think of the level of what we are compared to the FA Premier League, and that should show you how we should manage, these type of refereeing performances that we saw last weekend.
Adam?
Yeah, I can't really argue with anything that's been said by Tina or Aaron on that. I'd agree with the issue about the lack of funding to improve the general standards of refereeing and officiating across the board. It's we have the same argument, the same debate, season in, season out. Refereeing standards aren't as good as we'd like them to be. Why is that so? And the answer is pure and simply money. Until somebody throws some money at the issue, to improve, the coaching that's available to our refs and linesmen, to maybe give them more equipment, to look at things like goal line technology, things that we've talked about previously, then, these arguments aren't going to go away. What I would say, though, is, on a wider point, look at the interaction between the EPL and the Elite League. Why aren't we, looking at officials from the EPL, coming into the Elite League when they've performed well, and vice versa? Now, I totally get Aaron's point about there being, too few officials to be able to, start hitting linesman and referee with bans because of poor performance, because they've missed obvious things, and the general level of officiating has been poor. But I think ice hockey in this country isn't big enough to have 2 different pools of officials. We might as well, and I don't know whether it might lead to some sort of unification between the 2 divisions in terms of the teams who play in the leagues. But I think we ought to be looking at the officiating in the EPL, because there probably are some decent young referees and linesmen in the EPL. So if they want, there should be a route through for them to progress into the Elite League. And, if an Elite League official has a bad night at the office, misses a couple of bad calls, then, they might be able to go down and do an EPL game the following weekend. But, that really relies on widening out the number of officials that, both leagues have got at their disposal. But, I just think it's really important that a young official has got a route through from, starting off doing like rec hockey if they want, going through junior hockey, and then going up into, English Division 1, EPL, and then ultimately the Elite League. Because it seems like people are just parachuted into the Elite League at the moment, and, they might not have had the best grounding that they could have done, to give them all the sort of experience that they need.
Tina, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I do take a little bit of issue with the whole demotion to linesman, or demotion to lower league, because being demoted to a linesman, it's not necessarily. I don't think a lot of them would think of it as a demotion. It's a little bit of a disservice to a linesman, because a lot of them are, they're quite happy being in that, calling it a specialised role, if you will. So I don't think that's going to be the way to go, to be honest. I mean, it's not exactly going to encourage anybody. If you have a bit of a stinker, or you have a bit of an off night, we're just going to demote you. It's about the support now. And also, I don't know if I'm remembering this rightly, but I did listen to the interview that Todd Kelman did for the Elite League, and I seem to recall him mentioning something about referees' assessors. So I don't know if that, I can't remember if he said that was something he wanted to do or something that was actually already happening. So and if that's the case, obviously you can't just have. There isn't the money around. Obviously, we're talking about it again. That M word again. The money is not around for us to have these referees, assessors at every game, and you can't guarantee you're going to be at a game where a referee has had a bad game. But also as well, the whole demotion to a lower league. I mean, as I understand it, some of our referees already do referee in the EPL, so they probably wouldn't see it as a demotion. I know Stefan Hogarth referees in the EPL. I'm sure there's one or two others as well that aren't as active on social media as Hogarth is. But they wouldn't necessarily. I don't think it would. I don't think the whole demotion option would put everything in the right context or in the right light. But again, what you would need to do, it's just to coming back to the previous question. It's about the support and what the league can do to support its officials. So it's got to be implemented. Whatever's available, and if the funds exist, then it's got to go there. Just to rant on a little bit more, as I understand it, the only barrier to goal line technology is a couple of arenas or rinks that are having trouble with hanging the cameras up. And that seems to be the most basic thing. So that's something we could be implementing if whoever it is that's having the trouble had a better relationship with whoever it is that owns their arena or rink. The 4-man system, we had it a few seasons back and quietly shelved it, and then we had it a little bit later on, and certain teams were refusing to pay for the extra official. So it just all comes down to money, and that's kind of where it is. But in terms of that kind of a game, definitely in terms of the injury that Jeff Dimmond has ended up getting, that would definitely be a candidate for me for an assessor. Just imagine, we've got we've got referees, assessors, and they just didn't happen to be at Nottingham when Liam Sewell was refereeing. That's one you sort of somebody goes, excuse me, Simon, can we get somebody watching this game, because we think the referee might have he could maybe do with having a few things pointed out to him that he's missed, or we think that there are some things he could have done better. So but until the money exists to have that sort of process in place, I just don't think the demotion idea would work. But based on the fact that some officials already do referee in 2 different leagues, and the fact that I don't think it's very fair on the linesman to call it a demotion.
Okay. Can I just add something?
Yeah.
We talked. I think Tina mentioned that. The quality of hockey has got better, more professional, but the level of officiating stayed the same. Well, that was something that was levelled at football referees for years and years and years at the top level. because until about, I think, 12 years ago or so, referees were amateur. Yet they were, refereeing multimillionaires who were being paid, £20,000-30,000 a week. Referees are now professional in the Premier League, and I think most of them are professional throughout the rest of the Football League. Yet every week we argue and we bitch and we moan about the decisions that referees make. So I think it's just a general point to be aware of, that we could have the best officials in the world, but unless you get robotic sort of standards for getting every sort of decision right, then we will continue to moan and snipe on podcasts like this and others. So I don't think we're ever going to get to utopia. That's what I'm trying to say in a bit of a long-winded way.
Every single one of us are potential armchair officials. That's the problem, unfortunately.
Not potential, we are.
So like I said, I would recommend to everyone, it's available to download for free, the EIHL rulebook, which is what the Elite League uses with a few exceptions. Download it, have a look at it, get to understand it, because it will help your understanding. Since I downloaded it a couple of years ago, my knowledge of the rules has come on leaps and bounds, and I would recommend any hockey fan to download it and take a look at it. Okay, we'll move on to something completely different and leave Dops there. This question comes from Sam Barm, and he says, why do you think the scoreboard advertises tickets for the next game every time we concede? Is it always next time mentality? I must admit, I have not noticed that at all, but I don't know if you have, Aaron.
I haven't, to be honest. I'm like you. I don't even really look at the scoreboard, to be honest, because it just annoys me that we have such a low quality scoreboard. So I don't know. You're going to have to ask. You're going to basically have to ask the operators of this screen, really, because that's who looks after it. So I don't really know how to answer Sam's question, because I have no idea about it, to be honest. But I would hope that it's, I don't know, maybe it's just somebody that finds it funny in their own strange world. But it'd be interesting to know how many people actually do look at the screen when we concede a goal. I don't, you know.
I've generally got my head in my hands, so.
Yeah, I don't know, but it doesn't really even bother me that much, to be honest. That we do that anyway. I don't read into it too much, I'm afraid, Sam. But like I say, I'm surprised you can even read what it is actually advertising. The screen is that poor, so.
I must admit, I only really look at it when the score's up there, or penalties, or just how long is left on the penalty, what the shots on goal are. I don't really look at it for the advert, because all it is just arena adverts being churned out all the time, so I take very little notice of it. Adam, Tina, anything?
No real observations on that. I mean, like you, I've not generally noticed that. But, we get enough, in-game mentions of upcoming fixtures from Ken, to perhaps not need to maybe promote upcoming games quite as frequently on the scoreboard. But, it's a shrewd observation, Sam. Can't say I've noticed it myself, but similarly to Jono, I've normally got my head in my hands or looking down to the bottom of an empty pint glass. So,
and that's just not even when we concede either.
Yeah. So, no, nothing really further to add on that.
Yeah. Tina, anything?
No, not really, but... Well, I say no, not really, but it is this sort of, it's not necessarily this always next time mentality, but there is definitely a focus within the Panthers organisation for getting bums on seats. I'm not sure that's necessarily the best time to do it, because when you've conceded a goal, you're sort of thinking, why am I watching this rubbish again? that's probably the closest unprofound thought that might run through any Panthers fan's head when we're busy conceding a goal. In terms of me personally, where I sit, it's just not practical for me to look up at the scoreboard. So I will probably look at it maybe the first couple of games of the season to see if the intro video is any better than last season's. Or the only other possibilities is if I brought somebody along and it's their birthday and they've got a picture on the screen. That's pretty much the limit of me looking at that screen, because I agree with Aaron. I think it's woeful quality. It's absolutely awful quality, and it's the fact that we can only show 30 seconds of video before you have to reset the screen, and then you can have another 30 seconds if you want to. It's just it's bush. Quite frankly.
Fair enough.
It's not quite Fife scoreboard where we were leading 9-1 at one point after having scored scored 3 goals. But for a club our size and an arena that size, it's bush, I'm afraid. But I think it's basically the big Panthers emphasis on bums on seats. Obviously it's working, because the arena's been very healthily filled. I think for most of this season, to be perfectly honest. It's like when you listen to a player interview. If Gary Moran's doing an interview, he'll be like, the next game is at this time, and there's good seats still available, and you just think, we know there's good seats still available, because if there weren't good seats still available, you'd be banging on about a sellout. So I think joking apart, I think it is pretty much down to the Panthers organisation just putting a big emphasis on getting people in the building, which it's not the worst thing in the world, but the timing of it, if because like you guys, I don't look up at the scoreboard when we've conceded. So yeah, the timing of it, if that's the case, very questionable.
Okay. This next question comes from Amy Waghorn, and quick answers from all of you. If you could bring anyone back from last season for the remainder of this season, who would it be, and who would you get rid of? Adam, we'll start with you because you made
Adam
the sound.
Don't let Adam start. We could be here
got?
for a very long time.
You asked for a quick answer, you might regret saying that. No, I'll give you a quick answer. Right, that the one player that I would get rid of, who I think has been very, very poor this season and caused me to go grey prematurely, probably, is Matt Carter. I would get rid of him in a flash. And if I was to bring anybody back, I'd probably bring back David Ling, who did play last season, but I wouldn't bring back that David Ling. I'd bring back the David Ling that contributed so well to the league title.
Okay, Aaron.
Sneaky way of answering the question there, Mr. Reddish. Well, I wouldn't get rid of anybody because we're always around the corner from another injury. So
yeah, and I to be honest, that was going to be my answer. So you've saved me a job.
So I'd probably bring. I had to think about this one. I'll be honest, because there's a couple of players that I'd bring back, and not necessarily the obvious ones, but I'd bring back Kolnick. I think at the moment,
yes,
just to help to unlock and I think very we'll talk about the other players packed last season, and I think Kolnick would definitely help us more games by actually getting on the score sheet.
Tina?
Only one answer I can give, I'm afraid. Fastest skater on the planet. Challenge Cup hero, Sir Evan of Mosey. I would love to see that man back in a Panthers jersey. I've just made big friends with his dad again, obviously. But yeah, I think we've sort of missed somebody with his effort level. I mean, we had a couple. Lest we forget Cam Jansen. Missed 100% every shift, whether whether he was feeling it or not. It was just out there. But Evan Mosey, who the heck actually ever found the formula to deal with Evan Mosey on the opposition? I mean, I know we didn't have it wasn't the most gelled of team, and again, as the Nottingham Panthers do, we suffered from that big injury curse. But Evan Mosey's utility aspect and just his general skating, and I think he was a definite punch player that we could really have done with right now. In terms of, oh gosh, I feel like we're getting into being bullies, but I cannot disagree with Adam, unfortunately, on the man on his way out. I think we expected a lot better from Matt Carter. I mean, when you were in Gap, Jono, all the fans there were saying you've got a really good player. We're really sorry to see him go. I'll be honest. I don't think we got that. I don't think we've seen that Matt Carter yet, unfortunately. I mean, he had a bit of a flurry. What was it? Sort of beginning of December time. When the injury started rolling in, that really was his time to shine. And I don't think he really did, to be honest. I'm sure he's a really good player, and I'd like to think that the Gap fans weren't really buttering our bread. I mean, they didn't have anything to lose by telling us that by telling you, Jono, that they were sorry to see him go. But I don't think we've seen the best of him, and that it's unfortunate. But if we were to be able to bring Evan Mosey back, that would be the first man to make way for me, unfortunately.
Well, for me, I would bring back Jonathan Quick. Not Jonathan Quick, Kevin Quick. Jonathan Quick plays for LA.
I'd love to have Jonathan.
Yeah, that'd be a bit of a
considering he's never played for us. That could. Sorry, Kevin Quick. I would bring him back because I thought he shored up our defence last season, and I think our defence needs shoring up, especially with Jeff Dimmon's injury. So he would be the one I would bring back. And as for getting rid of, well, I've already said, same as Aaron, with the amount of injuries we have, I wouldn't get rid of anybody at the moment. Even though there are a couple probably underperforming, I don't think we can afford to get rid of anyone at the moment. So thanks for your question, Amy. Moving on to a league-wide question. It comes another one from Kenwyn Jones. He says, if Guildford join next year, which is looking pretty likely, it must be said, what format conference would work best? Which teams in each? So Tina, you start us off.
Well, I mean, I don't think we want to reinvent the wheel or anything. I don't think we want to go full in, splitting up the conferences too much. So, in terms, I mean, this is, if we get 12 teams, it's almost new territory for the Elite League, because I don't think there's ever been. Has there ever been 12 teams in the Elite League? I mean,
no,
obviously, I don't know.
So.
That.
I think 10's been the most.
Yeah, and of course, this would be the first time with 12 teams with a conference system, which, it seems to be kind of doing its job at the minute. So there's no reason to scrap it. So I think probably two conferences of 6 initially. And then in terms of where you draw the line, I mean, maybe sort of a north-south divide, but then you sort of it kind of puts Manchester in a bit of an awkward position, because they have got some serious miles to go up to the Scottish teams, and flying over to Belfast more often. So I think,
to be fair, I mean, Manchester are doing that already. So
well, yeah. Yes. Now, I mean, the one thing I would say, I know when the conferences first came in, and it was Hull who were getting the short end of the stick, as it were. I think there was some travel. They had a travel subsidy that's was sort of thrown their way to just try and help them along a bit. So maybe a similar sort of arrangement could be made for Manchester in that scenario. But I just think you don't want to overcomplicate it. So a sort of north-south divide is probably not too far away from making it work. I mean, I think Brayhead and Belfast have got they've got the opportunity to have a fair old tussle, and Fife keep popping up with they keep getting these decent wins against Erhart teams as well, current Erhart teams. So I think you've got the potential for a decent sort of split. So then obviously you see Guildford and Milton Keynes coming into the Erhart conference. I just don't think we need to reinvent the wheel, basically.
Okay, Adam.
Oh, it's complicated. I mean, I do agree with the basics of what Tina was saying there in terms of a north-south divide. 6 teams in the north, 6 teams in the south. My worry is about the long-term sustainability of that. I mean, my ideal preference would be to go back to the old way of doing it, whereby you just play the same number of games against every side. But I do appreciate that, if we went back to that sort of arrangement, then that might put the Scottish teams' noses out of joint, particularly Fife and Edinburgh, who I don't think would relish going down to Guildford or Cardiff too many times. So I think the conference system has done a really good job in stabilising the Elite League. The key thing now is to make sure that however the Elite League is rebalanced in terms of the conferences, keeps everybody that's involved in the league happy. Well, certainly on a financial footing anyway. It's only when teams start to lose money because of the way that the conferences have been arranged, that's when you're going to start to see teams maybe wavering about whether their future is in the Elite League or not, and they might look for an alternative league in which to play. So it's going to be very tricky. I don't really have the answer. I've given it some thought about how Guildford and Milton Keynes could slip in, but it would really cause an imbalance to where the teams are relative to the United Kingdom. So I think it'd have to be a greater mind than mine that works out the best arrangement and the logistics for keeping all the Elite League clubs happy from the start of next season.
Okay, Aaron.
I'm kind of on Tina's wavelength, to be honest. I think the simplest way of
Oh dear, I think Aaron is. Aaron has left.
Oh, have I gone?
Oh no, you're back. You're back.
He's
No,
back.
am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, okay. North South. I agree with Tina. Move on.
Yeah. So do I. Simply, I think to make it simple, Guildford and Milton Keynes in the Earhart Conference. Belfast move out of the Earhart and go in the Gardner. I think that's all it needs to be. For me,
I think. I mean, sorry. You can sort of review it later on. I mean, there were a few people who were talking about 3 conferences of 4, which, if that's going to work better, travel wise, especially, and if it's going to make financial sense, then you sort of look to do it. But I think initially speaking, just stick with what's logical.
Yeah. Okay. We've had a question in from Max Artis. He says, "Why is the league not as progressive as it could be? What would you bring in first if it was up to you?" So very, very quick answers from all of you, but I will bring in 4-man official. Adam?
Finally get goal line technology over the line. Okay. No pun intended.
Okay. Aaron?
Financial backer.
Yeah, where would you get that from, though?
A Russian oligarch.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't know, to be honest. But what would seriously? I would try and bring in a financial backer, but I'd properly go with a 4-man
system. Yeah. Okay, Tina.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've sort of taken the most obvious ones, but seeing as I've whinged about it enough, some sort of consistent
Evan Mosey
process. Oh yeah, Evan Mosey as well. Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, the rest of the league can all start off. He's going to be a Panther. But yeah, I think as I've been whinging about it so much tonight, a consistent DOPS system / panel.
Staying on the Elite League, and this question comes from Sue Doherty. It's, does increasing attendance overall show the Elite League is in good health? Tina?
I don't know if it shows that the Elite League is in good health, but it certainly highlights that the teams are in good health. It certainly shows that either the PR and advertising is kind of doing its job. It's they're bringing in the people, they're spreading the word, and the product that people are seeing on the ice is attractive enough to make people want to come back. So it's obviously good, because the more popular the teams get, the more people who are seeing it. Just to sort of slightly go off on a tangent a little bit, I don't, until there is some sort of TV, and I know there is a TV deal, but it's on an it's on an obscure channel, and it's it's a highlight show, and it's until we've actually got some sort of more mainstream TV coverage, live games, there's more people getting to see the product. I think that's it's going to stifle the growth to a certain extent. So yes, it's good, but I think we need better.
Okay, Aaron.
What was the question again?
Does increasing attendances overall show the Elite League is in good health?
Do you even read the agenda? What's wrong with you?
I do, yeah. I've been ill, bless me. I kind of agree with what Tina was saying regarding. I think, obviously, on the top level, you would say yes, the Elite League is looking strong, etc. But I think she makes a really good point in the sense of club. And I think there are a lot of clubs out there that are putting a lot of hard work into making their club more attractive, more on board with what the fans want, etc., which then obviously leads to increased attendance.
Well, I think
one of those I would say is Coventry Blaze.
Fantastic media team.
Well, I think, Rob and Craig have done they've changed a lot of things in that club, and they do a lot of hard work. And I think, that is for the benefit. And if you look at, the Cov Blaze on the ice, they've not had the greatest of seasons, and it's tough, so if you were a fan going back or a new fan, then you would say that the on ice product isn't necessarily going to grab you in and maybe take you back week on week. But I think you have to look at what the media team does on the website and stuff like that, which is very clean, fresh, and they do interviews with players, etc. With some guy, I can't remember what his name is, Jonathan Bullard or something like that. I don't know, but I think they put a lot of hard work into that area of the club, and I think that has an effect. So when Tina mentions individual teams, I think that's a really good point, and there are other clubs that are doing that as well. But so I think it's the clubs that need praise, but when the clubs do the hard work, then the Elite League obviously will grow as well.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that's been said there. Obviously, the on-ice product needs to be right for people to keep coming back to watch repeatedly, week in, week out. But I think Aaron's right in terms of social media. We all know how important social media is these days. It's very influential in the world. So, I think clubs really do need to go out of their way to make sure that, that they've got that part of the market really, really tied down. And yeah, you can see the benefit of what Coventry have done. They're playing to almost sellouts at the Sky Dome, and it's a great achievement.
Well, it came out this week, didn't it? That they've had record attendances over 2,300.
For the
which
most consecutive
time, which hasn't had. Well, it is beat the season they won the Grand Slam, and they're currently sort of in 8th place in the Elite League. So it is a phenomenal achievement.
It is a great achievement, and it just shows that if clubs prioritise correctly and put the money where their mouth is when it comes to promoting the clubs, then they will get the results, and they will be playing to nearly full arenas and rinks every Saturday. So yeah, I mean it's great to see crowds generally on the up around the league. The key thing is momentum. How can clubs keep that up? Particularly the ones that might not necessarily be challenging at the top end of the table every season, but the clubs are obviously doing something right. We do need to kick on to the next level, though. I think an accessible TV deal is critical, because maybe ice hockey is approaching its sort of natural plateau in this country, and it's almost like everyone's best kept secret. But to break out of that sort of cycle, then we need to, make the sport far more accessible to those that have got, satellite subscriptions, etc., etc. Or maybe even the ideal thing will be to get ice hockey onto terrestrial TV somehow on free terrestrial television. That could well be a pipe dream, but if that happened, then the sport could absolutely skyrocket.
Well, they're probably arguing that they have with this front runner program, which is on Freeview, but
it is, but to be honest, if you ask me what channel it was on, I would not be able to tell you at this minute in time. I'd have to go away and look for it, and not everyone's quite as willing to search through the TV schedules to find a show like that on at I don't know what hour it is. I was going to say an obscure hour, but I think that that's going to be the issue for British ice hockey in the next few years. Is can we sustain that level of growth year on year, and when it plateaus out, when it sort of reaches its natural level, what do we need to do to take the sport to the next level? And I'd suggest that a very big TV deal would probably be the way to actually realise that.
Okay. All right, we're just about out of time, but we've got one final question for all of you. And it would be remiss not to mention that, of course, today, the 9th of February, is the 16th anniversary of the infamous Panthers versus Steelers bench clearance, which happened on the 9th of February 2001 in the first season at the NIC. And the question is, can you ever see anything like that happening again? Just for a bit of background, because Tina and Aaron weren't Panthers fans at that time. Adam and myself were both at that game. So Adam, I'm going to leave you till last because you was there. So Aaron, we'll start with you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever see anything like that happening again? Because I assume you've seen the videos and everything like that.
Well, yeah, you see, I was kind of like a part-time fan at that point. I dipped in and out of it. I'd been at the old rink, but I wasn't, obviously, as you mentioned, like yourself and Adam. And obviously, over the years, I've seen the video many, many times. I can't see that sort of incident or that kind of night ever happening again, to be honest. I think those days are long gone. And that pains me to say, to a certain degree. I think hockey back then was a very, very different sport. I mean, I think back to, obviously being as young as I am, thinking back to the few nights that I was at the old rink, and the hockey's not like that anymore, and I just can't see that night being replicated now, because it's just a totally different game. It's going down more, further down the way of skill than kind of your enforcer fighting, brute force kind of physical hockey. You're seeing more and more kind of European type leagues appearing and switching to that style of play. I would say that we are one of very few leagues that have a North American style kind of play, and I think when you look at the Champions Hockey League final that was on just a couple of nights ago, and how fast and how skillful and the speed that was on show there, I think that is the way that is going. And just to finally wrap it up, because I know obviously we're short on time, is I just don't think the rivalry is even there anymore. The rivalry is completely different to what it was back in that day. I know it's still talked about as the biggest rivalry, but back then it was actual hatred.
Oh yeah, they hated each other.
Exactly. And you don't have that nowadays, because the players now, when you look at the increased import levels, etc., they're all mates. They all played back in college together, or they've been on teams together. They don't hate each other. It's fans, it's the clubs, that's what it's built on, and that's why you just don't. That's why you hardly ever see a fight now in a Sheffield Panthers game, let alone a bench clearance. I mean, you have to go back to even the one against Coventry Blaze, in the Sky Dome, for the last bench clearance that ever kind of happened within the Panthers, revolving the Panthers. But I just don't see it ever happening again. I don't. I think it's a totally different game. There isn't the hatred there. And imports come and go. They stay for a couple of seasons. They don't really get the rivalry. They might say that they do, and I don't expect them to be honest. It's for the fans, for me, that kind of rivalry. I'd love to see a bit more physical and to actually see more sort of fights when I think they should have actually happened, but you just don't get that anymore. So in a short answer, no, I don't see it ever happening again.
Okay. Tina?
No, I don't see it happening again either. I completely agree with Aaron. It's the whole shape of it has changed, the game, the rivalry and everything. I'm a little bit sad about that, because with me being a new fan, I don't get to experience any of that now. I mean, I've been coming long enough to get it, but I don't feel it like I suspect that you do, Jono, or you do, Adam. And yeah, that kind of makes me sad a little bit. However, the one thing I will say, just to sort of counter that, if you will, is that I don't think I would want to see those type of games again, purely and simply because of the rise of the internet, social media, blogging, all the media coverage. I mean, just look at the amount of coverage, negative coverage that we got with the Joe Grimaldi incident, with him chucking his helmet at Max Perron. That got us into the headlines for all the wrong reasons. We were in the headlines because we were kind of being laughed at. It's, oh, look what happens in this little teeny tiny league across the pond. Silly things like this keep happening. And you look at that, and you're there at the time, and you're sort of incensed by it, and there was almost a pantomime feel to that particular incident, and and then you sort of you watch what the rest of the hockey world thinks of you, and it just makes you a little bit sad. So I think that kind of, it's really, it's great that there's loads of this stuff that is it's on YouTube. There's the British Hockey Fights page. There's the hockeyfights.com over in North America. You've got like full games that are appearing on YouTube, which is brilliant. I think it's absolutely fantastic to watch back some of the stuff that I'm never ever going to see. But I am glad that with how well connected the world is these days, that sort of thing isn't happening anymore. I mean, the only thing I can really compare it to is when Craig Kowalski wanted to beat 7 Shades of What's It out of Peter Hirsch when he punched Mark Levers with his blocker. And I seem to recall Kowalski had made it down to the red line before Danny Myers ordered him back. And that's sort of the closest I can really come to having been present at an event like that. You could, if you look really closely on the highlights of that game, you can see me screaming blue murder at Peter Hirsch because I'm on about the third row up behind the goal. And I can sort of remember how annoyed and incensed I was at that particular incident, and I can see the humour in it now. And I look back on that video and I think, wow, what a night! but I'm really glad, because of how hockey gets reported and how well it gets reported around the world. I'm actually quite glad that those days have probably gone.
Adam, we was there. We saw it all happen in front of our very eyes, and
it was.
I mean, it's quite surreal thinking back to it now, because I'd never seen anything like that before. I'd seen a bench clearance in Sheffield, but wasn't anywhere near that bad. But this was proper boiling over hatred. Two teams that absolutely despised each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were a rubbish team. Let's not beat around the bush. That season, we were pants, and I think that might have contributed to the tempers spilling over and boiling as the season went on, because generally we couldn't really stay with Sheffield's quality, although given how much they spent on the roster that year,
3 times the wage cap, that's probably
but if we couldn't really match them in terms of where we were in the league placings, then that night we certainly gave Sheffield absolutely everything physically, and it had been boiling up over the season, hadn't it? There'd been
it started pre-season with Barry Nykar. The game I was at, where Barry Nykar high-sticked Dennis Vial around his head areas.
Absolutely.
Got chucked out of the game.
That marked the start of hostilities throughout the rest of the season, which obviously culminated in the bench clearance. And there were several other smaller incidents than that, but I think there was just the flashpoint, wasn't there? And things kicked off, and it was just incredible to see. And well, first, I can't believe it's 16 years ago, because it seems only like yesterday. But to get back to the original question, would it happen again now? No, I don't think it would, because I think hockey in this country has been overly sanitised. Now, some argue that that's a good thing, others might argue it's a bad thing, but it is what it is. And I don't necessarily see players come into this league anymore that could potentially kick off to the degree that happened that night. And it was actually great to see us really humiliate Sheffield on our own ice, because they'd had the rub of the green all season that season, and we really thought, right, that's it, because we were losing the game at that point at the bench clearance, and we turned it around and won it. And we might not have won the war, as it were, but we certainly won that particular battle. And for one night only, a lot of Panthers fans probably felt quite good about themselves, given that most of our players had given their players an absolute shoe-in. So it was quite possibly the most one-sided bench clearance I've ever seen in terms of who won all the key fights and matchups.
Absolutely. The only complaint I have about that night is because there was such a long delay while everything got sorted out. By the time we got out,
they called time at the bar.
Yeah, there was we couldn't even go for a drink afterwards, because
no,
it was back when it was 11 o'clock closing, and we missed it. Great.
Yeah.
But
where was Nicky back then in the bunker? bonkers.
I think a night that will always, certainly now, will be fondly remembered, but probably not so much at the time. Great stuff. Well, I think we shall leave it there for tonight. I don't forget that Panthers will be taking on the Sheffield Steelers at the NIC on Saturday and Cardiff at Ice Arena Wales on Sunday. We will hopefully have a periscope before Saturday's game, so look out on the Cat's Whiskers TV Twitter for that. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much to Aaron Lord.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Jono. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you to Adam.
Thanks ever so much, guys.
And thank you to Dina.
TTFN.
We will be back on Monday for our weekend review podcast. But until then, thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak to you then.